It's going to be interesting. And then the Hunter Dickinson deal, how that ends up can impact Indiana greatly. If he ends up in Kansas, that's an Indiana opponent for next year, and I cannot imagine how strong that would make the Jayhawks.
Right. Like that's, what we're seeing right now is essentially a version of and you talk about, NIL is free agency and this and that. Basically, what we're seeing is the pursuit of a high profile free agent with Hunter Dickinson, right? That's what it is.
It's a lot. I said earlier, he's in essence a lottery pick.
He is, right?
College basketball lottery pick.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing with him is that he has gone out of his way to make sure that no one knows where he's leaning or what he's thinking or kind of which schools he is really considering. He's gone out of his way to kind of keep people in the dark, which adds a different element to it. I think that's kind of frustrated some of the national reporters who normally know where this stuff is going. But that adds a different element to it, right? As well. So it's the problem is that, I guess it's not really a problem for college sports because people are interested in college sports right now in a way they're not usually in May, right? IU fans are following closely what IU is doing in the transfer portal because that's going to significantly affect how they do next season. Right now, in 10 years ago, how many people would be thinking about IU basketball in May? Probably not a whole lot, right?
The fans were.
Well, the
IU fans are.
They'd be thinking about it, but not to the extent.
But yeah,
now, right?
It's been created. But this has been created and cultivated by the media, by the players, by the leagues, by the shoe companies, by the schools. It's been a group effort to make this what it is.
Yeah, and it's not the worst thing. It's just for the sport to have interest throughout the year. That's what the NFL has done. Is they've made it so that there is interest throughout the year and people buzz about it the entire year. And that's not the worst thing for the sport. It's just different. And so people are still adjusting to kind of the realities of how different it is. And it's kind of shell shock for some people because it's like this was supposed to be the off season, and right now it feels like we're learning how good teams are going to be next year.
Yeah, the portal has made college sports a completely year-round sport. You're right. These guys are playing one sport, so you're only looking at them in that deal. But now when the season's over, then you have the portal, the draft, the portal. Then you have all these new teams that you have to figure out, all these new rosters and all the different conferences and who's where now. And it's a complete shakeup. And it's a complete shakeup of the rankings, so to speak, who's going to be good, which is a joke to think. I'm sure you could, the top teams you could look at just because of the talent. But I've talked about the Big Ten. That's kind of shaken out. Michigan State, a team that is going to be strong, obviously. Purdue, most of their guys, all their guys back, added a couple of pieces. Obviously, they're going to be strong. Maryland seems to be strong. Indiana, I think that if they get, I think his first name is Jordan, right? Dingle. If they get him, he's a perfect piece for what they need and what they don't have. They still need a wing if they don't get that production from their current roster, and they have a spot for that. And if they were able to fill that, well, I don't know what else you would have asked for. They will have every single piece that they need to be competitive. That is, they will have upgraded with athletic, skilled players as a group, as a team. I think Indiana, if they're able to fill these two spots with these two guys are two guys very, very similar. Indiana is going to be a better team next season than they were this season. They were good, but they weren't a good team this year. It was basically Jalen Hood-Schifino and Trace Jackson Davis. That's it, which is fine. But as you've seen, if we watch the NCAA tournament, you have to have 4 or 5 guys contributing. You have to get it from everywhere. and Indiana just did not even come close to that. On the floor with their starting five, much less in the bench. They weren't even getting it from their starting five. So, man, you're already in trouble. Yeah. But I think that this new roster is different. I've talked about the front court players. They all have experience. Khalil Ware is the least experienced probably of them all. That's not even really true. I mean, I don't know if he played as much as Malik played last year, but probably close to it.
It was generally the same. Yeah.
I think so they've got some very experienced guys down there.
Right. Ware started some more games than Renew did, but generally they played about the same number of minutes. And that's kind of what I've been saying for most of the offseason is that the interesting part of this for fans, and as someone who follows this for basically my job, is that you are learning in real time how good Indiana is going to be next year. You're taking kind of the people like to follow recruiting, but it's usually a years long process. You get a guy in for a visit, you talk to him at camps, you talk to him at AAU games, you get him in for an official visit, that kind of thing. And now we're condensing that all into like a month or two, and it's kind of like we are learning in real time how good this team is going to be next year, and that's just not the way it usually works. And it's exciting, and it's probably terrifying for some fans, but it's extremely exciting because you can turn over a roster even faster than you used to be able to.
Kenneth asked, why not say IU was good? I'm not saying that they weren't good, but they were not a team that was a threat to go far in the NCAA tournament. Simply because they had two great players, but that you need more than that. They just didn't have everything they needed. That's it. I mean, they had some great players and they were good, but they weren't good enough.
And to be clear, part of that was Xavier Johnson getting hurt, right? Like Race Thompson getting hurt. He was not quite the same after he got hurt, at least athletically. And Xavier Johnson getting hurt, that's a huge piece, right? The whole point of the way they set up the roster last year was that it was Xavier Johnson, Jalen Hood-Schifino will be running pick and rolls next to one another, right? And you could have both of those options available. And they didn't have that. And Jalen Hood-Schifino stepped up in a major way, and that's why he's leaving. That's why he's going to be a borderline lottery pick, is because he picked up a lot of that slack by himself. But losing a great player like Xavier Johnson is going to hurt you no matter what. And that is the third. I was convinced for most of the year that they were missing that third piece, and I think the third piece on a lot of nights could have been Xavier Johnson. Now, obviously, he's not a super duper consistent player. He's a guy who's going to have great games and some games where he struggles a little bit. But on those nights where he had great games, he could have carried you to some wins that you might not have gotten otherwise.
Absolutely. And Indiana's going to be a very, very different team offensively next year.
Absolutely. They're not going.
Right.
Right. It's going to be interesting because they've played through the post for 4 years in a row now that Trace has been there, and they kind of did the year prior to that as well with Juwan Morgan. And I guess Romeo Langford was kind of the number one option that year, but Juwan Morgan was still the guy for a lot of that. And so they've played through the post for quite a while here, and they are not going to do that next year. Khalil Ware is a center, but he is not a back to the basket, get the ball and make a move and get to your left shoulder and shoot a hook shot. That's not Khalil Ware's game. So they're going to be much more of a perimeter-oriented team this year. And that's what's a little concerning for me, is that they don't have a ton of shooting for a perimeter-oriented game. And so that's what these next two, they have these two spots left available, and they need to use them on some shooting. And I think you're right. Jordan Dingle would be a good option. The kid that decommitted from Duke and has a visit scheduled to IU is one of the best pure shooters in his recruiting class. He would really help. Obviously, he's a 5-star recruit. He would help regardless. But yeah, they need to use these last two spots on shooting because the game is going to be much more perimeter oriented. You're not going to have a guy in the post who is going to be drawing double teams and getting you open shots all the time. You're going to need to be able to create them yourself and make them when you have the opportunity.
Absolutely. And I think that Indiana is going to be they're going to be too good to call them a sleeper, but I think that they're going to be sitting. You know, I mentioned Michigan State, Purdue, Maryland, which it's first of all, let me be the first person to say it is beyond dumb to make any prediction, especially right now.
Yeah.
But we've got nothing else to do, so we're going to do that. So why not? But it's also based on pretty solid information. Michigan State's looking pretty damn good. They got a lot of good pieces. They got good pieces back, good pieces coming in, new pieces, good recruits like Xavier Booker from Cathedral, and you've got Tom Izzo. Maryland, man, Kevin Willard has been building over there the same way with recruits. Rick Pitino, protege. Purdue, they're going to be a tough because you've got Zach Edey. I mean, there's just no way around that. Until Mount Edey is gone, he's going to be a problem. Now, what I'm wondering about Purdue, what happens to Purdue the season after next when Edey's gone?
Right. So here's the thing, and to be clear, we don't know that Edey is going to be back next year. He has not made that decision
he's
yet.
Back. I guarantee he's going
to. Okay, but I think the thing with Michigan State, with Purdue, and with Maryland especially, those three teams, the rosters are basically complete, right? You can see the full picture with them. It's easier to predict how good they're going to be, and it seems all three of them are going to be pretty good. Maryland went out and picked up Jordan Geronimo. So that's a piece that they have now that we'll probably see at IU face next year. But yeah, those teams are pretty set, and so it's easier to make predictions on them. Indiana, we still have those last two pieces are, as you said, one of the keys to the roster this year, because there are holes in the roster, but there are scholarships to fill those holes. And so if IU can get quality players to fill those holes, then now you're talking about a team that has a chance to contend for a Big Ten title again, right? And so that's the open question right now. And again, it's scary and it's exciting at the same time that we're learning in real time how good Indiana is going to be.